book distributor, study book distributor. Every started from 1970, and Mataji distributes books from next to Vrindavan temple. There's a book distribution store, so she continues to do that every day throughout the year. So let's hear from Mataji. We offer our respect, obeisance, Mataji. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhu bhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo Vaishnavam ki jai. Shpopat ki jai. You can start, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Prabhu, you're the devotee who was writing to me?
Yes, Mataji. Krishna Naman Das.
And I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh.
So, but I'm wondering, your community, I don't know exactly where Plainfield, New Jersey is.
Yeah, it is near Edison, Piscataway, South Plains.
Oh, near Edison. Okay, yeah, fine.
And our temple president is Grace Madhupati Prabhu is there on the line. So, yeah.
Very nice. Okay. And you have a temple there?
Yes, wonderful, beautiful temple. Yes, renovated the church.
And who do you worship in the temple?
Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Jagannath Balla Subhadra, and Shri Gaunitai.
Oh, it's really a big temple then. Wonderful.
We have a 4.5 feet tall Shri Radha Shyam Sundar.
Oh, fantastic. Jai. So you requested me to prepare the what Prithu Maharaj is speaking to his citizens.
Yes,
the persons who came to his sacrifice. That's 4:21:25. So would someone like to sing Jai Radha Madhava first?
Yeah. Govinda Nandini Mataji, are you in a position to sing? Or if not, Satyabhama Mataji can sing.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah, I will sing, Prabhuji.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhi Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Pancha Tattva Jaya Pancha Tattva Jaya Pancha Tattva Jaya Pancha Tattva Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaure Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaure Hari Bol धर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय शिल प्रभुपाद की जय गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल हरे कृष्ण.
Thank you, Mataji. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Text 25. So I'll read the text. I don't know what your protocol is, whether you repeat the text during the Zoom or not. In any case, I'll sing the verse, and then if you like, you can also repeat if you have the Bhagavatam in front of you. Tat Prajapati Pindartam. Anyone wants to repeat?
Which number, Mataji?
4, 21, 25. Shall I just read the verse? Is that what you usually do?
Mataji, we'll just...
Yes,
Yeah.
Mataji.
Okay, I'll just
I'll
read the
share-
verse.
Yeah, I'll share the verse in the text chat, but you can read the translation. Thank you.
Okay. Tat Prajapati Pindartam Swartam Evanasuyava Kurutha Doksha Jadiyas Tarhime Nugraha Kritaha. Word for word translation. Tat, therefore, Rajaha, my dear citizens, Bhartri of the Master, Pinda Artam, welfare after death, Svartam, own interest, Eva, certainly, Anasuyavaha, without being envious, Kuruta, just execute, Adhokchaja, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Dhiya, thinking of Him, Tarhi, therefore, May, unto me, Anugraha, mercy, Kritaha, being done. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Prithu Maharaj continued, therefore, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of Varna and Ashrama, and should always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your hearts. By doing so, you will protect your own interests, and you will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. Purport. The words Adhokshaja Diya, meaning Krishna consciousness, are very important in this verse. The king and citizen should both be Krishna conscious. Otherwise, both of them will be doomed to lower species of life after death. A responsible government must teach Krishna consciousness very vigorously for the benefit of all. Without Krishna consciousness, neither the state nor the citizens of the state can be responsible. Prithu Maharaj therefore specifically requested the citizens to act in Krishna consciousness, and he was also very anxious to teach them how to become Krishna conscious. A summary of Krishna consciousness is given in Bhagavad Gita 9:27. Yat karosi, yat asnasi, yat juhosi, dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi konteya, tat karushva mad arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give in charity, and whatever penances you undergo should be done in Krishna consciousness, or for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If all the people of the state, including the government servants, are taught the techniques of spiritual life, then although everyone is liable to be punished in different ways by the stringent laws of material nature, they will not be implicated. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So this fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we're reading about the descendants coming from Swayambhuva Manu, who was a direct son of Lord Brahma, Swayambhuv. And from Swayambhuva Manu came Maharaj Uttanapad, Priyavrata, and finally Anga Maharaj, who was the grandfather of Prithu Maharaj. From Anga, though he had the powerful seminal parampara in the dynasty coming from Dhruva Maharaj, because he married the daughter of the personification of death, Mritu, the son born of them, Vena, was very cruel and mischievous. And when Anga saw the nature of his son, he decided to leave his kingdom and enter into the forest. Now, the citizens of his kingdom were so distraught when they couldn't find Maharaj Anga because they were no longer with the king. And the Brahmins, the saintly persons, decided that according to custom, the son should be enthroned then as the monarch. But the ministers profusely objected to this because they understood Vena's cruel nature, and they knew he wasn't going to be qualified as a king. Nevertheless, the saintly persons enthroned him, and very soon afterwards, he showed his nature. Though the thieves and the rogues were afraid of him, they hid just like rats from snakes. He, in his foolishness, began to actually persecute the Brahmins and the saintly persons, the very persons who put him as the monarch. He stopped all sacrifices, and he showed himself to be completely unqualified as a king. So the saintly persons tried to pacify him by giving him good advice. But we know that if you give a foolish person good advice, they become angry. And in the case of Vena Maharaj, because he had a demoniac nature, he was beyond foolish. When they recommended to Vena that he worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead and please the demigods for his benefit and for the benefit of the kingdom, he chastised them. And he, in his foolishness, explained to them that you're just like paramours. You're giving up your husband, which is me, the king, and you're worshiping the demigods, just like your paramours. So he foolishly thought himself to be none different from the Supreme Lord. And therefore, the saintly persons, just by uttering high-sounded mantras, they killed him. And from his body, they were able to churn out first his sinful reactions in the form of bahuka, and then from his arms, they churned Prithu and Archie. Now, Prithu was actually a Shaktavash avatar of the Supreme Lord. Shaktavash avatars are jivas, but specially empowered to perform specific tasks on behalf of the Lord. And the special empowerment given to Prithu Maharaj was that of being the ideal ruler and leading the citizens to the path of bhakti yoga. That's mentioned in several purports by Srila Prabhupada, how he was empowered by the Supreme Lord. So Prithu Maharaj, just at the time of his appearance, there's the Jata Karma and there are different samskars that are performed by the Brahmins, and they could see by his horoscope and also by the beautiful bodily insignias on his hands, on his feet, and his different bodily features, how qualified he was as a leader, as a king, and as a devotee of the Lord. And they were able to predict all of his great deeds, even before he gave any indication what type of a leader he was going to be. So in humility, Prithu Maharaj tried to stop the Brahmins from glorifying him. But because they could foresee all of the wonderful activities of Prithu Maharaj, they predetermined these wonderful activities he would perform. He was so pure in his devotion because the duties of the Kshatriya, which he perfectly performed, are to assure that all of the citizens of the state are engaged in their occupational duties according to Varna and Ashrama. And not only that, because there are two different types of Varna Ashrama, one is Daivi, the other is Asura, that all of their occupational duties were being performed to satisfy the Supreme Lord. So in this particular sloka, Maharaj Prithu by this time, because just after his coronation, when all the demigods came and they gave him beautiful gifts to enrich him in his powers and his opulence, then when he saw that the citizens by that time, practically they were starving, and he determined that the reason that they were starving was because the earth was not supplying. Although everything was being done properly, she was withholding the grains within herself. So he chastised her. He was actually prepared to kill her, even though she was in the form of a cow. She surrendered to him, and then she allowed Prithu and all of the different inhabitants of the universe to milk her to get different foodstuffs from her. So after that, Prithu Maharaj, because as a Kshatriya, one of his duties is to perform yagyas, he then decided to perform 100 Ashvamedha yagyas. And when he was performing the 100th, Indra, he became envious because Indra, being the Lord of Heaven, he had to perform also 100 Ashvamedha yagyas. And he was afraid that Prithu Maharaj was going to take his position as the Lord of Heaven. So he did everything possible by assuming devious disguises in the form of saintly people or sannyasis, religious men, to steal his 100th horse in the horse sacrifice. And Vijitasva, or Antardan, his son, on the advice of Atri Muni, was able to each time get back the horse that Indra had stolen. But finally, Prithu Maharaj was recommended directly by the Supreme Lord not to attempt this 100th sacrifice, because Prithu Maharaj, being a pure devotee of the Lord, there was no reason for him actually to engage in karmakandiya yagyas. So then the Supreme Lord, along with all the demigods and Indra himself, came and benedicted the sacrificial arena of Prithu. And Vishnu, that particular incarnation was Kiradakshai Vishnu, who appeared to Prithu Maharaj in the arena. He offered Prithu Maharaj any benediction he wanted, just as Nrsingadev offered to Prahlad Maharaj. But Prithu Maharaj, being a pure devotee, just as Prahlad Maharaj is, he said he wanted absolutely nothing, that he wasn't a businessman. Actually, what he asked for at first was 1,000,000 ears. And this is also something that Rupa Goswami asked for, 1,000,000 ears and 1,000,000 tongues, so that he could constantly be hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So Prithu Maharaj, he wanted 1,000,000 ears so that he could hear from the pure devotees the glories of the Lord. Then he requested the Lord that he could have service at the lotus feet of the Lord. But then he feared that Lakshmi Devi might get angry because he would be taking her service away. So in that way, though he was in Dasyaras, he wasn't in Madhuri Ras as Lakshmi Devi is, because she lives on the chest of the Lord. He aspired for the service of the lotus feet of the Lord as the Lord's servant. Ultimately, what he said to the Lord was, I know that you, just as a little child, never ask anything from the Father, because the Father knows what the child needs for his benefit. So just as a child, I'm surrendering unto you, and whatever you feel is most beneficial, that is what I want only as the benediction. So then Vishnu himself, he benedicted Prithu Maharaj with pure devotional service. And he then also told him that the 4 Kumars would come and visit him. So after the end of this yagya, when it was over, the 99 yagyas were over, then Prithu Maharaj, he returned to his kingdom, and because of being Kshatriya, he began engaging in other types of ruling activities to make sure that his citizens were all engaged properly, and other sacrifices for the upliftment of the citizens or the prajas. So after performing one sacrifice, he was returning to his kingdom, and all of this welcoming him with great natural opulences. And when he entered into the city, he began to speak to the citizens very lovingly, just like a father to his children. And this particular 25th verse is when he is talking to his citizens after performing sacrifice, and he's giving them the best instruction that a king can give to any of his prajas. He says here, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death. So that's Pinda Artha. Pinda, we know, a man is recommended to have a son so that the son can offer Pinda, just in case the father falls down into a hellish condition after his death. This Pinda actually is food stuff that's offered to Lord Vishnu. So then it becomes prasadam. And when that prasadam is offered to the descendants, either the pitris or the father, that's how the father becomes purified, by getting prasadam. So for the benefit of the king, who is like the father, I want you to do something very specific. He also says after that, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of varna and ashrama. Now, the reason they should execute, and we also should execute our duties, is because the king, when his citizens are engaged in their proper occupational duties, the king shares 1/6 of all the pious benefits received by the citizens. But if the citizens do not engage in their proper occupational duties, the king also has to suffer the sinful reactions of the citizens. Just one small example I remember Prabhupada giving. He was on a morning walk and there was a big worm on the ground. We can see this sometimes. There was a worm and the ants were eating that worm. So there were many, many ants eating the worm. So the devotees asked Prabhupada, what type of reaction is this, that a worm would be eaten like this by the ants? And Prabhupada explained that that was his guru, their guru in their past life, and these ants were his disciples. So this guru was taking everything from the disciples, and now in this birth, the disciples are eating the guru alive. So the ruler or the king cannot simply extract taxes from the citizens without giving any benefit to the citizens. Therefore, the king must see that the citizens are all properly engaged. Now, when Prabhupada enters Samadhi, I have to get my phone just a minute. We have, when Prabhupada entered Samadhi, the devotees in charge of Prabhupada's belongings, just a second. Well, I didn't bring my phone, I'm sorry. I took a picture of Prabhupada's diary to share with you, but I left my phone downstairs in the bookshop, I'm sorry. So what happened was, in 1976, an arrangement was made that Srila Prabhupada was going to meet Indira Gandhi. And Prabhupada, before meeting her, in a little diary that he had, he wrote down the points that he was going to discuss with Indira Gandhi. And some of those points are very, very interesting. For instance, he was going to recommend to Indira Gandhi that Sanjay, her son, her first son, become the king of India, and that Indira Gandhi become the queen of India. And then he said that all the ministers had to meet 3 times a day for kirtan, that prostitution should be completely prohibited, meat eating should be completely prohibited, there should be kirtan held everywhere for all of the citizens. And in that way, he made about 8 points that he was going to present to Indira Gandhi. So unfortunately, when Prabhupada did meet with her, the day before the Prime Minister of Bangladesh had been assassinated. So she was in great anxiety about her own life. Ultimately, she did become assassinated, we know that. But that day, she was particularly in anxiety, and she couldn't hear properly what Prabhupada was trying to advise her, because she was very concerned about her own safety at the time. So later, what happened was her son, Sanjay, because they do not engage the citizens properly in religious activities, at that time, we were going through emergency here. I don't know how many of you lived in India then in the mid-70s. And there were big banners all over Delhi, work is worship. They were leading actually the people away from God consciousness towards communist philosophy, which was where the Sudras simply work hard for the government. And the government is considered the supreme controller. Another thing that Sanjay did then was, because he couldn't control by religious practices the population growth in India, he decided then that he was going to sterilize as many people as possible, the men. And he gave the government workers quotas of how many people they had to sterilize each day. So Prabhupada explained this to us later. So what these government officers here in Vrindavan did was, they knew that the Babajis were not observing celibacy. So they decided that they were going to sterilize the Babajis, particularly at Radhakund. So they went to fill their quota, and they started capturing all the Babajis and sterilizing them. So just like Prithu Maharaj, he was the most exemplary king who worshipped all the Vipras. And Prabhupada, he translates Vipras as Brahmins and Vaishnavas. When the four Kumaras came to him and gave their darshan to him, he offered his entire kingdom to them, simply because they were pure devotees of the Lord. On the contrary, what Sanjay did was he captured the Brahmins, the Vaishnavas, and he sterilized them. So Prabhupada, and soon after that, he died in a plane accident. So Prabhupada explained that the reason he died an untimely death was because of the offense that he had committed to the Vaishnavas in the holy Dham here. So Prithu Maharaj, he says to the citizens here that for the Pinda Artha, that means for my welfare at the time of death. So he's actually appealing to his own citizens to engage in devotional service. And which type of devotional service we'll hear in the purport. He says then, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of Varna and Ashrama, and should always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your hearts. So in the sloka, Supreme Personality of Godhead, one particular name is used by Prithu Maharaj, and that is Adhokshaja. The name Adhokshaja you'll find in all of the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it has a very, very beautiful meaning to it. We know in Sanskrit and in Hindi and most of the Indian languages, the first letter is A, and the last letter is Ksha. So from A to Ksha, we have all of the 49 alphabetical characters, A, Ksha. So if we try to describe anything within this material world, we have to use all of those syllables from A to Ksha. But those are all material sound vibrations. But when we try to glorify the Supreme Lord and all of his qualities and his Dham and all of his activities, his name is Adhokshaja. So from A to Ksha, Ja, that which is born from the syllables within the material world, the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all of those material sound vibrations. So actually, we can't fully glorify the Supreme Lord, and therefore, he is called Adhokshaja. So it's a very beautiful name of the Lord. And then he says more about the Supreme Lord. He says here that he calls the Supreme Lord Bhartri. Bhartri is the protector, the maintainer, the nourisher. Now, there are many names, even in the Bhagavad Gita, where we have Bhartri. And one of them is Bhuta Bharti. Or another name of Vishnu is Bhuta Brit. So now, because we're not really under lockdown anymore here in Vrindavan, the devotees are, you can't keep the devotees from worshiping Krishna here in Vrindavan. Our temple is so packed with devotees every day that we did better on the marathon this year than our previous year. We, from 7:30 in the morning till 9:30 at night, we're just distributing books, distributing prasadam, And there's no stop to the devotion here in Vrindavan. I don't know what your situation is in New Jersey, but I hear from my daughter who lives in Portland, Oregon, that temples are still not open there yet. Is your temple open yet in New Jersey?
It's restricted
Mataji.
open.
Yeah,
Restricted. Yes. Here we have no more restrictions. You just can't stop the devotees. They're like tsunami here. They're just so devotional here to see Radha Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Gaur Nitai. So we also have prasad distribution here, as everyone knows. Prabhupada wanted khichdi distribution at the front of the temple every day here. And therefore we are continuing to write and ask for donations and things like that. So a few days ago, they asked me to edit the letter for khichdi prasad donors. And the devotee who wrote it happens to be from South India. So he knows stories about Ramanujacharya and Sri Rangam and all the stories that we don't know about, because we only know about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and Krishna's pastimes mostly. So he told a beautiful story that has this word in it. In Sri Rangam, they also have prasad distribution every day. And the people would stand in line just like they do here in Vrindavan. But there was one man who would make such a hue and cry that he had to get to the front of the line every single day. And he brought tiffins with him. He brought a big container because he had to have prasadam for his whole family. He had 6 little children who had to be fed. And he would cause a disturbance every day. So finally, the devotees went to Ramanujacharya and they said, we don't know what to do about this man. Every day he disturbs the whole ambience of the prasad distribution. So Ramanuja decided to go visit, see what was happening. And he saw what the man was doing. And he spoke to the man. He said, why are you so worried? Everyone is getting prasadam. And the man said, no, you don't understand. If I don't get prasadam for my 6 children, they'll die of hunger. I have to get at the front of the line. So then Ramanuja asked him, do you know the 1,000 names of Vishnu? And the man said, well, I'm not very learned. I just know a few names. So Ramanuja asked him to start reciting the names he knew. He only knew 6 names. And the last name that he knew was Bhuta Brit. It's also this word Bartu, Brit, Bartri. So Bhuta Bartri, Ramanuja said, he asked him, do you know what this name means? The man said, no, actually, I don't know what it means. So Ramanuja explained to him that this means that the Supreme Lord, he is nourishing all of the bhutas, all of the living entities. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. So everyone is being nourished by the Supreme Lord. We don't have to worry about the elephants in Africa. We don't have to worry about the ants or the fish or the birds. The Supreme Lord is making sure everybody gets what they need. So Ramanuja recommended to him that you just go to your home and you chant this name, Bhuta Brit, 108 times, and see if he nourishes your family or not. So the man listened to him, and for many days then, he didn't come to the temple. But then the head priest went to Ramanuja and said something very unusual is happening. Every day in the morning, we offer the bhog. And then when we open up the door, a big portion of the bhoga is missing. And we don't know where that bhoga is going. And that man has not come since the time that the bhoga is disappearing. So we think that somehow or other that man is sneaking in and stealing the bhoga right from the Supreme Lord. So Ramanuja, he decided to go to the home of the man and find out what was happening. So he crossed the river, he went to the man's home, and the man immediately upon seeing him, it was just like when Mrigari saw Narada Muni, he ran to him, he offered his obeisances. He said, oh my Lord, ever since you gave me that advice, we have had no difficulty whatsoever. And Ramanuja said, how is that? So he said, every day, one of your disciples comes and feeds us as much as we need, prasadam. And when I ask him who he is, he says he's your disciple. So I thank you so much for sending him every day. So then Ramanuja understood that the Supreme Lord himself was coming and bringing prasadam to that man and his family. So he then understood personally, everyone then understood how the Supreme Lord, not only does he make sure that everyone gets what they need, but just to satisfy the words of his pure devotee, he personally, just as he says in Bhagavad Gita, he delivers what they need and preserves what they have. So Prithu Maharaj, he is recommending to his citizens that for your own good, for your svartha, and for my own good as well as your king, you please worship Adhokshaja, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with all of your occupational duties, either in the varnas or in the ashrams. And then, by doing so, you will protect your own interests, your svartha, and you will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. So this is the way an ideal king treats his citizens, with respect, with love, with their interest in mind, because when they're engaged in their occupational duties, they're also giving mercy to him, because he will also be able to enjoy the results of those activities. But we're not interested in these activities that will elevate us to heavenly planets. At the end of Prithu Maharaj's Leela, if you read on, I don't know what type of classes you have, if you do one class a day or one class a week, but as we read on, when Prithu Maharaj became elderly, and he realized it was time to retire as king, he then put his eldest son, Antardan, as the king, and he and his wife, Archie, they retired to the forest. And he engaged in severe tapasya along with his wife. And finally, while meditating on the Supreme Lord, he gave up his body and returned to Vaikuntha. And his wife also, because she was most chaste, she prepared his body on a funeral pyre, lit the fire, and then entered into that fire. And she followed her husband. The demigods, of course, the demigods and their wives, they live on Mount Meru, which is a very, very high mountain. But above Mount Meru, because we know that the pole star, that's where Kiradakshai Vishnu lives, the Dhruva star. And from that pole star, all the planets are rotating. They're circumambulating the pole star where the Supreme Lord Vishnu lives. So Prithu Maharaj, he was going higher and higher to the Vaikuntha planets, and his wife Archie was following right behind him. And the demigods and their wives were able to see them going above their heavenly planets towards the Vaikuntha planets. And they were offering so many beautiful praises and prayers to them that just see what a chaste wife Archie is. Just see what an ideal ruler Prithu Maharaj was, that they were able to attain the Vaikuntha planets in this lifetime. And then there's a benediction given that anyone who hears, anyone who recites, or anyone who even thinks of the wonderful activities of Prithu Maharaj will also be able to follow Prithu Maharaj back to the spiritual world. So this studying of Prithu Maharaj and his glorious activities and the way he was able to rule his kingdom, and it wasn't just India, it was the entire planet. all the 7 continents. And Prabhupada mentions those 7 continents: North America, South America, Africa, Australia, Europe, Asia, and Oceania. That's the 7 continents. And Prithu Maharaj, he was the emperor of all of those continents. There were thousands of kings who submitted to him. And in that way, he was able to see that the entire planet was being properly ruled by his strict rule, because he had the danda, the scepter of power. He was the dandadara. That means that he was able to punish those who did not follow the varnashram system. And therefore, as the representative of the Supreme Lord, he was called the Shaktavish avatar of the Lord, although it's Jiva. So just by hearing these activities of Prithu Maharaj, we get the same benefit that even Archie, his wife, was able to attain, and that is we get to follow Prithu Maharaj back to the spiritual world. So we can meditate, and sadly, today we have a HOD forum because we don't have meetings. So today, one of the members, he gave Allen Ginsberg, he asked Prabhupada once that in 400,000 years, will the devotees still be chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada said, no, Hare Krishna will be finished after 10,000 years. There won't be any chanting of Hare Krishna after 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, the golden age of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan Yagya, it will only be, I will eat you and you will eat me. There'll be no yagyas, there'll be no fruits, no grains, no milk, no sugar, simply meat eating. And meat eating will be to the point where we simply eat each man eats another man. I eat you and you eat me. And then finally Kalki will come and he'll kill everyone. There'll be no varnashram, there'll be no 8 orders. There will only be one order, and that is the outcasts, the mlechas. And then Kalki will come and he will kill all of them. And then the new Satya Yuga, the new golden age, will begin at that time. So Prabhupada recommended, he said, don't wait around. Go back to Godhead now. There's no, in another conversation, Prabhupada said, no, all of the devotees will already have gone back to Godhead by that time. So we should not linger in this material world, because it's not going to be a happy place to live in the next 10,000 years. We have this one lifetime. We should use this lifetime for the ultimate good. That means to chant Hare Krishna and to help others attain pure love for Krishna, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Maharajas. All right, any questions?
Thank you so much, Mataji. Because of your intense devotion, Srila Prabhupada and Supreme Lord is revealing the inner points, and these beautiful instructions you have shared. Really humbly offer my obeisances. Please
I just
speak
you also asked me to speak about Krishna Pushya Abhishek.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, because this is very interesting.
Yes.
A few days ago, on Krishna Pushya Abhishek, His Holiness Bhakti Ashray Vaishnav Maharaj, he spoke about Pushya Abhishek. So I'm going to repeat the few things that he said, because I had never heard these things before. And first of all, he explained that the word Pushya comes from the month Posh, which has just ended on that Purnima, Posh Mash. And then from there, Magh Mash begins. So Posh Mash is very auspicious. First of all, anything that you do on that day, you get the benefit of. And then the Magh Mela starts from that day. That's the first big day in Prayag, where they have the first bathing, that Posh Mash, Posh Purnima. So he says Pushya comes from Posh. He said also that in Jagannath Puri, first of all, Ramachandra, we know that Lord Ram, he killed Ravana, and then it took some time for him to return to Ayodhya and to get everybody settled in Ayodhya. There was Bibhishan, there were all the Vanaras, there was Riksharaj, everybody was there. And it was on Posh Purnima that he had his coronation. So that's another wonderful thing that happened on that day. And because Ramachandra was coronated as king on that day, in Jagannath Puri, Sri Jagannath Ji, it's one of the days where he wears his Sonavesh in commemoration of the coronation of Ramachandra. And Lakshmi Devi comes also to that on that day from her temple. So in Jagannath Puri also, it's a very important day. And then for the Shaktas, for 100 years there had been a drought, and the people were dying because there was no water and there was no food as a result. So the people prayed to Devi. This is just the way Vaishnava Maharaj explained it. And out of compassion, she took a very special form called Satambari. Her other name is Satakshi, where she had 1,000 eyes. And from those 1,000 eyes, out of compassion for the poor living entities who were dying of thirst, she started to cry. And from her tears, that was the rain that replenished the earth again. And then he said that for some reason or other, in ISKCON, they think that the word Pushya means Pushpa. So now there's a tradition, for instance, in Mayapur, they make beautiful Pushpa Abhishek of the deities. They take flower petals, they make Pushpa outfits for the deities. But he said in Vrindavan, we don't do that because we know that Pushya Abhishek, when Ram, because it's very cold at this time of year, it never goes below freezing here, but for us it's cold. Maybe it's 40 degrees or so. He said when Ram was coronated, because it was cold, they bathed him not in water, but they bathed him in ghee. So this Pushya Abhishek, the Abhishek is when you're bathed in ghee. But for some reason or other, nowadays in ISKCON, they do these flower Abhisheks. But we don't do that here in our temple in Vrindavan because the real meaning of Pushya Abhishek is Abhishek in ghee and the Purnima of Posh Mash. Okay? So that's a little explanation.
Thank you, Mataji. Looks like two devotees had questions. Taruni Radha Mataji, you can go ahead, and next SGD, whoever that is, you can ask next, and then Jagadish Prabhu. Go ahead, Taruni Radha Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji, for such a beautiful class. I really appreciated how wonderfully you explained about the life of Prithu Maharaj and how he attained perfection. My question today is, Mataji, like you were saying, how we can follow the footsteps of Prithu Maharaj. So he also, at one point, he will give his kingdom to his son, and then both he and his wife, without telling anyone, they just go to the forest, as in like they enter Vanaprastha. Yes. So my question is, in this age, should we also, as practicing devotees, plan for Vanaprastha in our life and follow it?
Oh, yes. Prabhupada, he explains that. He says that after the age of 50, the sloka given by Prahlad Maharaj is, after the age of 50, one should enter the forest. But for the Vaishnavas, forest means Vrindavan forest. So Prabhupada, he set up our temple in Vrindavan, and he invited all retired persons to come here and engage in service here. So that's how you can enter the forest. You come to Vrindavan and you engage in service here, either alone or if you're husband and wife, you come here together. We need lots of retired devotees to engage in service here because the ratio here is about 1 to 100. So many visitors are here. So you please come to Vrindavan, that forest, and you engage in devotional service here and go directly back to Godhead. Okay?
Thank you so much, Mataji. Begging your prayers and blessings. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Next, SGD.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Such a wonderful class, and Bhagavatam hearing from a pure devotee, it's truly nectarian. So thank you for the class. Mataji, the one point you mentioned that after 10,000 years, again, Satyuga establishes, right? So
No, after 400,000 years.
Oh, after 10,000 years?
After 10,000 years, there'll be no more chanting of Hare Krishna.
Oh, that will prolong up to 400,000 years from 10,000?
Yes, Lord Chaitanya's golden age of Sankirtan goes on for 10,000 years. We've only gone through 500 years or a little bit more than 500 years. After 10,000 years, there won't be any more devotees. There won't be any chanting of Hare Krishna, no yagya, nothing to eat except for meat. And that'll go on for 400,000 years. Then Kalki will come, kill all the mlechas, and the devotees will come out of their caves and start the Satya Yuga again.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mother. Thank you for that.
Jagadish Prabhu next.
Mataji, Hare Krishna, Dhanna Pranam. And so nice class, and just hearing your class, like a heart feel like the different directions and thought process starts become a serious more and more. So very nice class, and very you took all the devotees like a age of Prabhupada. So we are feeling like we are also with Prabhupada when you are explaining so much nicely. Mataji, question is that like you mentioned Ramanuja Char mentioned like somebody devotee, you go and everything will supply your home. So I'm just thinking about that devotee, how he so purified. He just trusted the word and then he stayed home, and then Krishna fulfilled the desire of the devotees, pure devotee instructions. So how that kind of faith developed, like just comparing with that, he heard and then he stayed home. So how we develop that kind of faith? So believe on the instructions and then follow sincerely.
Yes, that's because Ramanujacharya, being a pure devotee of the Lord, he gave a simple instruction to this devotee. And the devotee followed that instruction. He chanted the names of the Lord, just as we chant Hare Krishna. And because he was given the instruction by a pure devotee, and he followed that instruction by chanting the holy names, therefore the Lord himself blessed him. So we have the exact same good fortune. We've been recommended by Srila Prabhupada to chant Hare Krishna, and we're all chanting Hare Krishna. And therefore, the Supreme Lord, being pleased with our following the instructions of a pure devotee, he'll also bless us in the same way. We just have to have enough faith in the instructions of the spiritual master. Has anyone starved during this lockdown, the last 10 months? Certainly not. All of us have been protected by the Supreme Lord very nicely. Anyone here is starved? It's difficult to have personal conversations on Zoom. I'm sorry, I can't see any of you.
Thank you
No
so
one
much.
is, no one is starving.
No one is starving, exactly. And we're all chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I was reading the Prabhupada's in one of the past Prabhupada was explaining. In the whole world, nobody is starving actually in reality. Everybody is looking for this, doing, offering food to others and poor people and all, this charity work. But in reality, actually, nobody is dying because of hunger. And so,
That's right.
so
Yeah.
it's just lack of Krishna consciousness over there.
Yes, right. And because the rulers are not distributing properly, instead they're throwing the grains into the ocean. Most unfortunate. Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Madhukar Prabhu, anything?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I just had, Mataji, I'm just had a question. Apologies. So a follow up on taking the one ashram and getting into the new mode of varna after you finish your 50 and cross further on. Question is, so we as a devotee living here and doing the service a little bit, or I can speak for myself a little bit what I'm doing. You suggesting that your age grows up over 50, it's better to now get out of this and not think about so much about your children or anybody, how they would manage, or because really this is what we feel, coming here in this country, and I can speak for myself that we feel so um, uh, entangled, and it's really gets difficult to we were thinking that we can just devote our lives here with the temple and take shelter of Guru Maharaj and just keep our journey here. So I'm just trying to understand that one ashram cannot not be pursued here in this country or staying away from Vrindavan.
Well, Lord Chaitanya, he set the precedent to the same question. When he was traveling in South India, he went to Kurmakshetra and he met a Brahmin there. And he instructed the Brahmin to chant Hare Krishna, to go to his home and induce others to chant Hare Krishna. And the Brahmin came to him and said, I want to give up my family. I just want to follow you. And Lord Chaitanya said, no, you go back to your home. Do not change your position. There's no reason to renounce your family. You simply make them all Krishna conscious. So he didn't allow that Brahmin to give up his family. He sent him back, and then by his chanting of Hare Krishna, whoever he met became Krishna conscious, and whoever they met became Krishna conscious, and it became like a chain reaction in that way. So Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada and all of his followers, it's not recommended that we give up our situation, but we turn that situation into a Krishna conscious atmosphere by inducing everyone that we meet, including our family members, to chant Hare Krishna and to become Krishna devotees. So yes, nowadays, because the Varnashram is not being followed, for instance, by the age of 50, well, nowadays, sometimes we don't even have children till we're 40. That means the kids are much too young. You can't leave your wife like that. So you don't have to change your situation. Simply try to make the whole atmosphere Krishna conscious within your home and try to help your family members and everyone you meet become Krishna conscious. If you're able to retire and the children are grown up, the wife is either wants to come with you or wants to stay with the children, if it can be done comfortably and everyone is happy in Krishna consciousness, then of course you come to the holy Dham or you preach according to the instructions of your spiritual master, but it's not mandatory in this age. Lord Chaitanya set that precedence. I was just answering her question, that's all.
Thank you, Mother. You're very helpful. That just clears my perspective. Thank you. Hari Bol.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, it's Gokul Priya Devi. I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class, Mataji. Very inspiring. I had a question. Sometimes people don't believe in the scriptures, and you trying to preach. And when you, to your point about Kali Yuga, and how things are going to get so bad, they might say, "Oh, I don't care. I just want to come back and enjoy again, or I want to go to Swargaloka and enjoy there." So, what do you say to these people, Mataji?
Just give them prasadam. There's no sense arguing with such people. You just give them prasadam, and prasadam will gradually purify them. You give them as much prasadam as you can, and that prasadam, Krishna in the form of prasadam, will purify them. There's no sense arguing, because people like that who are simply interested in sense gratification, yes, let them have the highest sense gratification, which is Krishna prasadam, and that will purify them. Because nowhere in the world will they get anything as nice as Krishna prasadam. We don't argue. We simply try to purify them. It's trickery. Agyata sukriti. Because they're not interested in philosophy. They're only interested in sense gratification. So there's no sense trying to defeat them on a philosophical platform. Just give them the highest sense gratification, which is Krishna prasadam. Okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Mataji. Very practical. Thank you.
That was Prabhupada's secret weapon.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Madhupati Prabhu, anything?
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mataji, for your wonderful enlightenment. In your introduction, I think I can also say Mataji has been serving Krishna Balaram temple for how many years, Mataji?
We came here in 1974 to help build the temple.
Wow.
Right.
Haribol.
1974, and I remember when I came there in 90s, and I might have given some donation. And I think you are still leading the Bhisma department of Krishna Balaram.
No, I had to retire. I'm old. I'm 70 years old now. Now I just distribute books. That's all. And
Okay.
if people ask me to give classes, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah. So at that time you were leading the Bhisma department.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a wonderful gift in mail for some donation which I may have made in Vrindavan of nice embroidered box,
Yeah.
Vrindavan dust, and Radha Kund water in a small bottle. And we just followed that a couple of years back, saying that, oh, I got this gift which I got 20 years back, and I still have that.
Really?
So to all our Kalash donors, we gave that gift. So we still remember.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, and on the top of that box, or the inside, I was just remembering about those boxes a few days ago. We put the sloka Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pritipurvakam.
Yes.
Yogantam Yena Mamupe. Did you get that box?
Yeah,
Does it
yeah.
have-
There's some box. There's some small picture also of Radha Kund or something. Nice small box.
Yeah.
Hand embroidered memories of Vrindavan. It says on the top.
Right. Because every year, like about 6 times a year, we had to send letters.
Mm-hmm.
So we always had to think of new gifts. And that's why now we've printed about 60 books here in Vrindavan, just taking quotes from Prabhupada's books, and like that Prabhupada meditation calendar, different ways that we can reciprocate with the devotees who are helping here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe I came also in 2004, 2005, when my brother had passed away, and I was doing a day in Vrindavan, and I remember
Nice.
he took me to a place where you were giving me all the gifts, different gifts, the calendar, and this and that.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for all your wonderful services.
And I hope when this lockdown, when this misery is over, you'll be able to visit Vrindavan again.
Yes, Mataji, we are missing. I come every couple of years there, but I bring devotees in Yatra from here.
Oh, very nice. Wonderful.
So you're welcome, Mataji. We are looking forward to come there. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Very much, Prabhus. I have to go close up the shop now. Please
Sure.
forgive me.
Thank you so much,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
I'll send an email for the next class.
Haribol.
I heard indirectly, my wife used to hear your classes, so that's how I got to know. It was wonderful.
Really?
So that
What is your wife's name?
Haripriya Gaurangi Devi, Mataji.
Hari Pri Gaurangi Dev. And your Guru Maharaj?
His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila
Glory to
Prabhupada.
Daivisakti.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad.
Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Wonderful.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Hari
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 Krishna.
Hari